Well, welcome everybody. I hope to give you a little bit of an overview of AI and what it's going to do for the future of education. And let's get right to the slides here. And I think in terms of what the impact of AI is going to be on education, I take a quick step backwards. And some of you may be old enough to remember these, others have read about it, but one of the first major technologies and an event that would impact for education was 1984, and that was the launch of the Macintosh, they called it in those days. And for those who might have been in classrooms then or shortly thereafter, what a difference it made when classrooms started having the access to a computer or a computer lab and the ability to do things that they could never do before, word processing and number crunching. And it really, we still haven't even yet completely absorbed all the things that we could do with technology and computers, but that was a seminal moment. I think the next one for education was in 1998. And that was the launch of the internet. And again, some teachers maybe here have been teaching for a while and might remember when that was introduced, particularly after the year 2000 and made it to schools. One of the first big programs was Google. And this is actually the first beta page, what Google looked like in those days, where you would put your term in to search for Google, and it would give you some possible web pages. There weren't as many in those days. And you can see here they have special searches that they do. And so what's happened in the last 20 years in terms of the internet access, online research, the ability for teachers to get information, it's just been incredible. And of course, all our programs now are online and apps, and has made a big difference. I think the next major event in terms of technology in the classroom was last year's launch of OpenAI's ChatGPT and similar products that have come out since then. I know for myself, I'd heard about AI and knew people working on it, but it really did catch me by surprise. I mean, in January of that year, I heard from actually some students in high school that they found this new program and new app that would allow them to do some quick research and in some cases write some papers for them, and how exciting they were. And so when I went to ChatGPT for the first time, a little bit over a year ago, I was amazed what was there and what could be done. I just spent hours asking it questions, seeing what it did, write me a story, give me a lesson plan, tell me about the Battle of Gettysburg and everything that it could do. And so I got so excited, saying this is going to be a significant game changer in education, and it's going to do some tremendous things for us. And so that's when I started getting very much into AI, ChatGPT, to see all the things that we can do and what would be the practical things we could use it for in the classroom. And so a couple of things here. Let's see, get the right search going. So a couple of things about me, about the author. I'm Jim Bowler. I've been a teacher and a principal for over 17 years. I was all at high school, so a little bit different than some of the audience here, which is probably more elementary and are fans of ESGI. Taught a number of different subjects, started out teaching a lot of social studies and government and American history, and then got so into technology, I started teaching coding and algebra and really looking at the tech side. And after my career in teaching, I decided I wanted to continue to work in ed tech, and have been doing that ever since, working in areas where I could be involved in extending learning and challenging both schools and teachers to adopt technology and see how it could make a difference in the classroom. So I was at Pearson and Harcourt, two of the larger publishers. Then I've done some startup companies after that, and now currently the general manager of Riverside School Solutions. Riverside, a large assessment company that owns ESGI and COGAT and Iowa and a number of clinical products as well that are used in schools. But more so and important to this conversation, I'm just an AI enthusiast. I really love working in AI, thinking about what it's going to do in the next couple of years. And I got so excited, I actually even wrote a book that's going to hopefully come out in another month or so, called EngAIged and Fearless Teaching in the Age of Bots, and really talking very practically about what teachers and administrators should know about AI and how they can implement it in their classrooms. And so I'm going to give you a little sneak preview on a lot of the things that are covered in the book in much more detail today, and be practical about that. So first, top 5 things we should know about AI and what's interesting. And number 1 is AI is overhyped. If you're like me, maybe it's because some of the things I read or subscribe to or watch on YouTube, all I see everywhere is AI, AI this, AI that, AI in your school, AI for teaching. It's going to make it easier. It's going to make it harder. It's giving kids wonderful research. It's letting kids cheat. It's just all over the place. And I think we're kind of caught up a little bit in the fad at the moment that everything's going to be about AI, and there's a lot of overhype. Number 2, AI is underhyped. Okay, seemingly a contradiction. What I think is, in the short term, it's overhyped and how it's going to change the world tomorrow. I'm going to make a difference in my classroom and what I can do, and that's not going to happen overnight. But I think it's underhyped in what it's going to do in the next 5 or 10 years. Just like the internet. For those who may have been around in the dot-com era when the internet came out, all you heard about is internet. Every company changed their name to .com and .com this. We had pets.com and greenchoice.com, and a lot of companies that have long since gone out of business. But in the long run, people didn't understand how significantly different the world would be because of the internet. What Amazon would grow into, what it would do to Sears, what it would do to Macy's, all the different disruptions, what happened to Blockbuster because of Netflix, the significant, and that's what we're going to look back in 5 or 10 years to say, wow, all these jobs, all these solutions, all these things have changed so dramatically because of AI. Number 3, AI is going to be the most disruptive educational technology since the internet and maybe ever. Now, this is certainly debatable, and we could talk about that, and I'm sure a lot of teachers are talking about that, and it gets back also to that overhype, but I really do believe this. I mean, if we look at what technology and computers did significant, what we looked like getting online and being able to build communities and work with each other through the internet, really significant. But the ability for AI to take away teachers' tedious tasks, to do the things that we don't want to do, to be a personal assistant, for students to get differentiated learning, to do some of the things I'm going to show you how to do real quickly here, it is really, really significant. And I think we're going to look back and say, this is the most important tool that teachers will have going forward. Number 4, AI is not an end in and of itself. The key thing here is it makes sense only when it's solving a problem for us. You don't want to put AI into a classroom or work with students or anything just for the sake, hey, I want to use AI. What is it going to do for us? And I think companies that are making AI products have to ask that same question. We just don't say, oh, now you can buy ESGI with AI inside. No, you can buy ESGI and we have an AI module that's going to help you combine a number of different tests and give you specific teaching strategies for each student. That is solving a pain point for you. It's not just AI for the sake of AI. And then finally, AI is not perfect. We must proceed with our eyes wide open, be cautious, and look at what district policies are emerging and make sure we fully understand the imperfections of AI, the security challenges, what grade levels are appropriate to introduce students with AI in the classroom, either by whole group instruction or when we let them to go use AI in our classroom for projects or learning. All those things must be discussed, and we must understand our guidelines and kind of think about what's the best use of AI and the most appropriate use. If we look now at going to ChatGPT, and a lot of the examples today, I'm going to be using ChatGPT live. Hopefully, there's not much lag time here, and kind of show you great examples of things that you could do with your students in the classroom right away. So let me bring over the ChatGPT window real quick here, and here is a question I want to answer the audience. I need you to give me 3 different animals. Give me 1 animal each. I'll pick 3 that we're going to put into our story here. And I need a moral of the story. And so if you would in chat or question, if a few folks would put in any animal they want, because I want to, again, show you what you can do in your class if you were asked your class. And give me the name of some animals. And I'll make up a couple names. And then I want to look at someone, if they would put there, I see hippo and cat and lots of cool things. Someone, if they could put in a moral, what do you think the moral of the story should be that we're going to create? I'm going to use a hippo, a zebra, and I see a giraffe. Okay, and all right. And the moral of the story, I got to thank someone I looked there, was be kind. Okay, be kind. And we're going to use a few names. Maybe we'll use a couple of the names. Let's see here. So here's what we're doing. We're going to use, like in a whole class instruction, say, let's do something creative today. Maybe for my first grade class or a kindergarten, I'm going to write a short story, 200 words. We're going to ask AI, and it's going to be about a hippo. Let's see, it's going to be about a hippo named, and we need a name for this, not a zebra here. I'll take that out. Named Kristen. And, or no, Kristen, I won't make you a hippo. Okay, well, I'll just make up a Sally. And then we're going to have a giraffe named John. All right. So just two animals, hippo named Sally and a giraffe named John. The moral of the story is be kind, and the audience is kindergarten students. All right, so then we're going to just submit. And if I were teaching this class, you know how kids love to be in the middle of stories and be kind of involved. And this quickly, if you haven't seen ChatGPT before, you're going to be surprised how quickly it can craft something. And so let's look at the story it made. In a sunny corner of the jungle, there lived a playful hippo named Sally and a gentle giraffe named John. Sally loved to splash in the river while John enjoyed munching leaves from the tallest trees. Though they were different, Sally and John were the best of friends. One hot day, Sally couldn't find any water to play in. The river had dried up under the scorching sun. Seeing her friend in distress, John thought hard about how he could help. With his long neck, he reached up into the trees and pulled down a big leafy branch. He carried it over to Sally and laid it in the sun. Here, Sally, John said, let's make a leaf pool. Together they pushed and patted the leaves into a big shallow pit. Then John asked the clouds for help, and soon a gentle rain began to fall, filling the leaf pool with water. Sally was overjoyed and splashed around, thanking John for his kindness. From that day on, they knew no matter what, they could always count on each other. A jungle was filled with laughter and the beautiful spirit of friendship, teaching everyone that being kind is the greatest gift of all. Okay, a pretty good story that you could use with younger children. And the cool thing is you have their names in it, the animals they picked, the moral they picked. It can be really, something that you can use right away, and you can expand it. You can have 3 people. You could you don't have to use animals, they could be flowers, but anything that using your creativity, you can create something so quick. In the chat window, put down, have any of you done something like this in the class before? In your class, you can put down, have you done any kind of stories like this where you involve students or interactivity? Just let me know in the chat as I'm looking at and continuing here. All right, the next part of what I want to show you with this is, you can focus on specific phonics, audience members saying yes, that they've done this before. Okay, and let me copy the next question over here. So now that we've done this, I want to really make this a lesson. And so I'm going to put in a question. Can you create 5 inference multiple choice questions about this passage for a kindergarten student? Okay, so let me now ask ChatGPT, because I don't want to just create an original story. Now I want to see and test the students on a little bit of the comprehension of the story. So here's the questions that they've created about this. What did Sally the hippo love to do? Eat leaves, splash, sing songs, or run fast? Okay, why was Sally sad? She lost her favorite toy. John went on a trip. The river dried up. It was raining. How did John help Sally? He found her toy. He made her a leaf pool. He sang a song. He danced. What made the leaf pool fill with water? Sally jumped in. John poured water with his mouth. It started to rain. They found a river. And then finally, what is the story trying to teach us? Leaves are important. Giraffes can make rain. Be kind. Being kind is wonderful. Or hippos and giraffes can be friends. So here's questions created right away. I could ask for 3, 7, 8, 9. I can cut and paste. I can make a quiz. We could do this in whole class instruction. I could ask the students, about this. I'm now thinking, hey, well, this is really good. Can I build this into a lesson? So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to ask ChatGPT to make a lesson plan out of this story for me. so that I can, build it out, or if I was doing this ahead of time, I could prepare my class, and this is going to be my interactive lesson. So I'm going to ask ChatGPT to create a 30-minute lesson plan for me to use to teach this story. And I wanted also to attach the standards that I'm meeting when I'm using this. And again, my example is kindergarten. You can do this in first, second, third grade. You could even adapt it, obviously, for middle school or high school. And so right now, the first time I did this a long time ago, build a lesson plan, I was shocked how good the lesson plan was. It was better than a lot of the lesson plans that I was using in class. And so let's kind of look what it built here for us. It says the lesson plan is called The Kindness of Sally and John. It's kindergarten, 30 minutes. Students will learn the value of kindness and helping each other out to create lasting friendships, the materials I'll need. Okay, the story, which we created here, construction paper. Here's the standards from Common Core, and we can get them, more specific or general standards if we wanted. These are the Common Core standards we're going to be using in this lesson as I teach it. It talks about, again, the format's great here. Introduction for 5 minutes about the story. Then we're going to, read the story after we create it and, ask some comprehensive questions. We're going to discuss the moral of the story. I have an activity here. I'm going to create a kindness tree. And again, we just created this on the fly right now. I had no idea what it's going to suggest. And so it is, it's great that we can see, what it's suggesting to me. And I can, of course, edit it if I don't like some of the lesson plan. But when they have a piece of construction paper, ask them to draw themselves, then they're going to play music in the background, and they're going to create a bulletin board of a kindness tree explaining each act of kindness around the classroom. And then we have a conclusion or wrap up follow. So, really, really interesting. If I don't like this lesson plan, I could just ask it again, give me a different lesson plan, or give me a lesson plan what I can do outside, or, or in the auditorium, or any specific things that you want to give it guidance on. It'll then personalize that lesson plan. All right, so now let's see how we can differentiate this and personalize it even further. So what I'm going to say here is, I have a really diverse class. Can you create 3 different activities for me to use in class? One easy one for struggling students, one for my students on grade level, and one for some of my accelerated students. Let's see what we have here. So again, this is all live. I don't know what these activities are going to be. I've done this before, but every time I get a different activity, and it's always very interesting. But I want to now maybe break up my class after my general instruction and have them work in groups. And so now I have 3 different activities that I can assign different groups. And so the first one is feeling charades to help students recognize emotions and develop empathy through nonverbal cues, which is foundational to the step of understanding kindness. I'm going to need cards with pictures showing emotions, and then I'm going to students will sit in a circle. They'll explain how we're going to play the game. Student will draw a card and then act out the emotion. So again, an interesting activity. If you don't like that, say, hey, give me a different one. For students on grade level, they're going to be engaging in role playing to navigate various scenarios where they can practice kindness, enhance the social emotional learning. And remember, this is all about kindness, just because at the very beginning, someone in our chat here suggested that we talk about kindness and be kind. And so we're going to divide into the small groups, differentiate the cards. Each group is going to do some role playing after the performance, the class that we're going to discuss with the rest of the students and whether demonstrated and how it could be applied in real life. And then finally, another group can do the kindness project to foster leadership and innovative initiative by having students create and lead a kindness project that benefits the school and community. And so they can propose templates, art supplies, and introduce the kindness project, what they're going to do. And so I'm not going to go through all the details here, but you can see it really is a much broader project. And I think from a learning and teaching point of view, you can see what's happened here with the first lesson plan. It really was on task, very specifically about what is kindness, and how it, what a card is, what's an emotion, very literal almost. The second one was a little bit more expansive. We're going to act out emotions. We're going to do some charades and play with each other. And this third one is like, hey, we're going to organize a project in this school. And so you can see how different groups could have a different challenge here by differentiating this learning. So hopefully that gives you, an examples here of how real quickly you can use this tomorrow in your class. If you have, a projection screen and a computer and access, ChatGPT is free, the basic version. You could have some interactive lessons or interactive stories that you could build and share with your students right away. Likewise, I'll just show you another quick example of how it differentiates for the teacher if this was something that could help you. In my class, I'm going to tell it that I also have 2 students who struggle with English, but they're at grade level in Spanish. Can you translate the story and create an activity for them in Spanish? And so immediately it comes here, and for those of you who speak Spanish, you can see what we're going to be talking about as a history story here, and the whole activity. First of all, the story with the hippo and the giraffe and Sally and John is all translated into Spanish. And from what my colleagues who do teach Spanish say is the Spanish is pretty good. There's always some kind of idiom or things like that might be off a little bit, but it's really good. And then here's the activity itself and how you could have students, you could print out this and the students can do the activity in their group. So all kinds of really interesting ways that you can use this based on this one singular lesson in what you're able to do. And I think I'm going to stop there in terms of this first example of how you could use ChatGPT and AI. So quickly, if you have any questions, put them in the chat, and I'll look at those in a little bit as we're changing to the next topic, and I might be able to answer those for you. So let's go back here to the PowerPoint. And so before we go much further, I wanted to address things about the concerns and trepidations we might have about using AI and talk about that, because as I'm saying here, I really see the power of this and very excited. And so I have a bias, and I want to get that bias out of the way, that I think we should be using AI. I think there's a lot of creative ways, as long as we have, again, our eyes open. So here's some things you need to be thinking about. Number one, if you're using this for research, or students are using it for research, it wasn't built for research. It was built for conversation, talking, chatting, things like that. And so it does have great information, but there's a cutoff date. It doesn't have any information after April of 2023. Every few months they add some more, but it takes almost a year of training the model with new data in order to use it. So if you want to know about some stock last week, or who won the World Series, or anything that happened in current events, it can't help you. It can't do that. Now, they built a new function in ChatGPT that'll work, goes out to Bing and its partnership with Microsoft, and it will look at web pages. So it'll give you some information, but that is nothing more than sharing some things on web pages. So that's one thing to be concerned. Number two, it hallucinates, and that's a term what they use actually with AI, and that means for some reason it just gives you an answer that makes no sense at all. It doesn't do it often, but it does do it, and it happens to me too. And it just gives wrong answers. Sometimes they're silly, but sometimes it's just wrong. One day I was, doing, hey, give me the top 5 things the students should know about Ronald Reagan, and number 5 was that he was the only president that survived an assassination attempt. And I looked at that and said, I don't think so. I can remember Gerald Ford had a couple assassination attempts that he survived, and there were several other presidents. And then I said to ChatGPT, hey, didn't Gerald Ford and several others? And ChatGPT is very, very polite. It says, oh no, I made a mistake. You are correct. And then it listed the presidents that also had survived assassination attempts. So why did it get it wrong the first time? No idea. It just happens sometimes. So if any student or you are going to use this for factual information, it's double check your work, just like you would do with any other website that you go to. You can't believe just the first website. There's always going to be a mistake here or there, so be careful about that. Number 3, security and privacy, really, really important here. You need to check with your district on what the security and privacy rules are that you should be able to use ChatGPT when it's appropriate, with what grade levels. The other thing is you should have some best practices where you're not using student names or student information or student identifying data in ChatGPT. ChatGPT says it's very secure and data is encrypted. It doesn't keep it on their servers after you leave, but best practices is never put personal information. So if I'm going to talk about hey, I need help for John with the math, using a first name is fine. I would never want to use a last name. And if I had to throw scores in, I would make sure that any scores I put in, again, there's no identifying information of whose scores these are. So some good district policy there. Bias, I would always be concerned about bias. They're trying really hard in all of these AIs not to give you bias, but clearly when you talk about difficult subjects like politics and religion, you have to be a little concerned. It tries to be objective, but think about bias. How did ChatGPT get all this information? It kind of just searches and scans the web. So therefore, if there's bias on websites, it can show up because ChatGPT can't differentiate. It tries to look at so many sites that it eventually figures out what the right answers are and what the trends are. But obviously, if all the websites are built by old white men, then when it gives an answer, it's going to give an old white man's answer because that was what its training is on. And the scientists are working really hard to make sure that the information going into ChatGPT is very diverse, represents a lot of viewpoints, and is very sensitive to cultural issues. But again, it cannot be perfect, and you need to think about that and use that accordingly. Digital divide. This could be ChatGPT and AI can be a tremendous advantage to bridge the digital divide, because if a student has an iPhone, an iPad, any small device, Google Chrome books, they have access to all this wonderful information to support them, give them resources, help with homework. But likewise, if we still don't provide bandwidth and hardware and training to students who come from areas and families which have this are going to be even further ahead than students who don't have access to this. So that's an issue. Student plagiarism. You've heard a lot about this when it first came out. All you hear is the high school teachers all complaining that everyone's papers were being written by ChatGPT. It's still a problem. They're trying really hard. There's companies that make programs that flag it for a teacher or a college professor to say this could have been plagiarized or used with AI. It's going to be an issue. I think that's something that we'll have to deal with. I think that you set the rules, the guidelines for students, and you work with them on that. And I have some other ideas on how to do homework better in a little bit that would get around the student plagiarism issue. The next couple ones, the diminishment of critical thinking. We have to figure out a way that we use AI to help foster critical thinking, as opposed to ways that it's going to do all the thinking for us in the future. And I know there's a lot of concerns that teachers have and educators have about what is this going to do to society and what is this going to do to our students. And finally, I put this in half jokingly, but world domination. You've probably seen a lot of science fiction movies of what happens when robots take over. I'm not saying that's going to happen. However, we do need to look about where this is going in 5, 10, 25 years as AI continues to improve. All right. If you have any questions about any of that, please put a question in the chat box and be happy to answer it for you. Next up question here is, all right, so how do I get started with using ChatGPT, Bing, Bard, Gemini, all the different AIs that are out there? There's a science now. This is new words that I heard just about 10 months ago for the first time, called prompt engineering. And prompt engineering means how to ask questions to AI that give you the right answers. Okay, and I think teachers are natural for this. Teachers ask questions all the time. You learn how to ask specific questions, because if you don't give a specific question to a student, they keep asking, well, what about this or what about that? Did you mean this? And so I think teachers are really just natural, great question askers. And so here's just 4 guidelines on when you're writing a prompt, which is really just a question in ChatGPT, like I've been doing, what you want to do. And number 1 is you want to provide clear instructions. So you want to write a so this is an example. Write me a step-by-step guide for 7th grade students to solve problems with variables on both sides. So a math question, clearly. Okay, that would be something ChatGPT. You're very specific on what you want, what the output should be. Number 2, provide contextual details. Okay, let them know what's the context, who is this for, and what are you doing? So this one is a good example. If you were our English teacher for a day, how would you guide students to analyze a passage from Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and discuss social and historical context of the American South during the mid-19th century. Again, more of a middle or a high school question, but you can see that the context is very clear. You're an English teacher using ChatGPT to answer as such, and you're very specific on what you wanted to analyze. Number 3, differentiate and personalize. So here's an example of making sure it's personal. Design a writing prompt for a 3rd grade student with dyslexia, providing visual cues and scaffolds to support their writing process. Okay, very, very specific to what this student needs now, and you're personalizing this prompt. The next one, provide examples. Craft a compelling writing prompt for high school students that encourage them to their cultural heritage or personal experiences and how they shape their identity. The prompt should inspire introspection and self-discovery. Okay, again, a very advanced high school prompt, but you can see there the examples. So these are just, again, four guidances on how you might want to write questions when you go into ChatGPT. Okay, and I just want to give you a couple more examples of prompt engineering and some good questions. When you ask questions that are too general, you don't get great answers. So looking here, a bad prompt is, can you tell me about literature? A better prompt would be, what are some notable works of literature from the Romantic period? A bad prompt would be, what are key aspects of the English language? Way too broad. A better prompt would be, what are some key features of Old English and how does it differ from modern English? In math, a horrible prompt, explain math. Okay, a much better prompt would be, how does the Pythagorean theorem relate to right-angled triangles? Same thing. What are numbers? That's not a great prompt at all. But asking, how does the concept of complex numbers extend the number system beyond real numbers? Okay, again, being very specific on what you want to ask. In social studies, a bad prompt would be, tell me about world history. A better prompt would be, how did the Industrial Revolution impact the social and economic landscape of Europe? Very narrow. Bad prompt. What are governments? Good prompt. Compare and contrast the characteristics of a presidential and primary system of government. Okay, when you ask it a very specific question, you're going to get a very good answer. And finally, in science, explain biology. Better prompt. What are the major differences between, I can't even say these words, but these 2 types of cells? A bad prompt. What is the universe? A better prompt, how does the theory of cosmic inflation explain the uniformity of cosmic microwave background radiation? Unless you're probably a graduate student or a physics teacher, that would be a hard one. But again, you get the point of being very, very concise on what you want, narrow, and you're going to get great answers from ChatGPT and AI. So let's go back to ChatGPT, and I'll give you some more examples of things that you can do right away with it. And so, we last left off was our Spanish story. We're going to go a different area now. We're going to go test writing. This might be something that would help you create some tests. So I'm going to cut and paste something I've already wrote, a prompt I wrote. This is a little longer prompt. And so basically the prompt is saying, hey, the first Common Core standard for kindergarten English, ELA, is reading foundational skills. It lists what it is. And I want you, ChatGPT, to write a multiple choice question to assess the skill questions. And so let's make it have instead of A, let's make it write 5 multiple choice questions to assess the standard. So the standard here is on developing basic reading skills such as recognizing letters. So here I am going to ask ChatGPT to do that. And what it's going to do is give me 5 questions. And again, this is the first draft. I could use these questions. I might like these questions for a quiz I want to give. Or I might edit them or use them differently. If you have ESGI and you're creating your own test, this is a great way to say, this is what I taught my students yesterday. Here's the topic. ChatGPT, give me 5 great questions, 5 inference questions on this, and then you could create your own test in ESGI, put it in there, and ESGI, of course, will assign and score it for you with your students. So a great way to use this with ESGI. Which of the following is the sound that the letter M makes? Look at the word cat. What word rhymes with cat? Okay, what does the word big mean? When we read, in what direction do we read the words? Choose the word that is spelled correctly. Now, again, I can't attest to whether these are good questions or they need help, but if you saw that they were good, except that they're using words that are too large, or hey, I would never ask a question that way, you could go up to this prompt, cut it up again, paste it, and then put that in. Hey, do this, but don't say this, don't do that, or make sure you have 2 choices, or I want true and false. Anything that you can think of in being creative, you can do here in this prompt. And so that's an example of how I could begin doing that. The same thing if I wanted to, move out of ELA and do something in the math arena. I could go in, and here's a math standard on operations and algebraic thinking. And so understand this, and I want the same thing here. I want this standard to be assessed, and I want, let me add the questions here, write 5 questions about this, and I'm going to ask that we look at the questions. If you have 2 apples and you get 1 more apple, how many apples do you have? Sarah had 4 candies. She eats 1 candy. How many does she have? Again, some very basic. This is a kindergarten level. I could have said 7th grade. I could have said 12th grade, algebra, or even physics, and it would do the same thing. Give me questions that I can use. And once again, if this is something I taught yesterday and I'm using ESGI and I want to create my own test, here's 5, 10 questions that I can cut into ESGI right away and use. And so that would be an example of math that you might want to consider. So you can see here for tests, for quiz, if I have sight words that I want to add, I could cut and paste 10, 20 sight words in here, get a test on that. So a lot of ways to do quizzes that you can use in your class if you want to. Let me just go back to our, all right. So the next activity that you might want to do your class, and this one really got me excited because, again, I'm a former social studies teacher. One of the things I taught, and this is how you would do role playing in class using ChatGPT. Whoops, I don't want to show email there. I want to go over here and I want to get my document. So ChatGPT can take on the role of any figure in history and then tell you not only about them, but you could interview them and talk to them in that way. So let's pick one here. I'm gonna pick on Alexander Hamilton. Some of you know who he is, and some of you may have seen the musical and know more about Alexander Hamilton nowadays. But here's what I'm gonna ask ChatGPT. You are, I want you to play the role of Alexander Hamilton, an American founder. My 7th graders are studying a unit on the early days of our country, and I want to be able to interview you to start our unit. Can you do this in a way where we learn more about you and the times, and you frame your answers for 7th graders? Okay, and so hello, Mr. Hamilton. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Now you can make this for kindergarten, 1st grade, 12th graders. It'll give you different levels of information. So we picked 7th grade here. And so here's what Alexander Hamilton tells us. He says, hey, it's a good day. It's truly an honor to be speaking with you. I got to slow this down a little bit here. My name's Alexander Hamilton. I played a part in the formation of the United States. I was born on January 11th, etc. During the American Revolution, I served as a aide de camp to General George Washington. I'm a strong believer in the central government to unite us. It's a pleasure to share my story, and I'm eager to delve into any questions you might have. So think about this with the class. We now have almost Alexander Hamilton in our class. We could ask him some questions, and of course, I'm going to call on my students, say, hey, what do you want to ask Alexander Hamilton now that we have him here? And so I would, I could ask him here, let me cut and paste one over about him. I can say, whoops, that was the wrong one. Excuse me. What did you think of Thomas Jefferson? Okay, there was always the Hamiltonians and the Jeffersons feuding with each other. So let's see what Hamilton's gonna say. And he's gonna say, Thomas Jefferson, a name that evokes a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Mr. Jefferson and I were quite the opposite in many regards, which led to numerous debates on how our young nation should be shaped. You see, Jefferson was a proponent of a more agrarian society, and goes to, etc. And despite our differences, I respected his intellect and passion. Our disagreements were foundational in establishing the diverse political landscape. And it's important, young scholars, now it's talking to your class, that differing opinions are vital to the health and growth of a democracy. So really interesting. And, the other thing is, in a 7th grade class or a high school class, Is this true? Well, it's just ChatGPT guessing what Thomas Jefferson or Alexander Hamilton would have said. We now can debate it in class. So my next question to my students would be, this is what ChatGPT thinks he would say. Do you think, from your reading and your knowledge of Alexander Hamilton, which you read last night for homework, do you think this is what Alexander Hamilton would say about Thomas Jefferson? So we don't have to accept this as truth, because it is artificial intelligence, but it leads to a critical thinking period here in class where we can do some really interesting things. If we want to get more serious with Alexander Hamilton, we get asked, we know that he didn't own slaves, right? He was one of the few founders that didn't. And so we can ask him a question, why didn't you own slaves in that period? And this again is what ChatGPT interprets or guesses that Alexander Hamilton's answer would have been. So now how do you might be asking yourself, how does ChatGPT know what Alexander Hamilton would have answered? Well, it spent a whole year searching the internet, reading every Wikipedia, reading every source it could find, and it has that information. And from that, there's probably passages somewhere where Alexander Hamilton may have been asked this question, and it may be able to know this. So sometimes I find it just fascinating where it got the information, and for the most part been very accurate. So as Alexander Hamilton, my stance on slavery was complex and evolved over time, shaped by my early experiences. He was born and raised in the Caribbean, and he saw firsthand the brutalities of slavery. His work then as a founding, father, he became a founding member of a society that worked for the abolition of slavery. And, he talks about this, about the times, very, very interesting. Again, I would read this to the students, or we'd see it on the board, and then I would ask my students, hey, do you think this is accurate from what you know of him? And you read about this in the last couple of days for our lessons. Do you think this is what his response would have been? And so one final question I would ask my class about Alexander Hamilton, and I know if I asked my class today, someone would want to know this question. Would you be surprised that in the 21st century they made a musical about you and it was one of the most popular of the century? And let's see what Alexander Hamilton would say about that. And again, this has got to be completely fictitious because there's no way in history books there'll be anything like this. And so he says, indeed, the notion of my life and contributions would be that would be the subject of musicals, both astonishing and humbling. In my time, the arts, particularly theater, played a significant role in society, about philosophy, etc. And the creation of a musical suggests a continued interest and reflection on the founding principles of the United States and the enduring legacy of the founding fathers. So really interesting, the way he got right into he was astonished and humbled, and at the same time, he's excited that we're still, prizing the legacy of our founding fathers and talking about them and even putting them into a musical. So some really interesting things there. Now just think about all the things that you can do with any kind of figures that you would be interested in interviewing in your class, science or math or history. In the chat, or someone could share if I can't see the chat, can someone just pick two historical figures that they would want to have interview each other? So we're going to do one more example here where they're going to interview each other on their historical chat here. So anyone put in the chat or question box and share with me, and I will make the next question relevant to anybody you think in your class, two iconic figures that you'd like to see us be able to have interview each other. Anybody have any preferences at all? And I will gonna put in here, right? Rosa Parks, famous person, and maybe have her interview somebody fun. Oprah. And what I could do is you could pick any two people. I'm just gonna have them. I'm not gonna read the whole thing for you, but I will show you. Rosa Parks and Oprah Winfrey interviewing each other. Oprah interviews everybody. So let me just stop it here and we can look at the beginning. And Rosa Parks says, "Good afternoon, Oprah. It's such an honor to meet you. Meet someone who's used her voice to empower so many." And Oprah Winfrey, "The honor is all mine, Miss Parks. Your courage on the bus in Montgomery has been an inspiration to me and countless others. It's amazing how one act of bravery can change the course of history. And you know, Rosa Parks, thank you, Oprah. I just did what I felt was right, and you know, continues to talk there, and they go back and forth. You know, Oprah talks about the power of speaking for the truth, and Rosa Parks says yes, you know, about not refusing to give up her seat and how important that was, and Oprah talking about how that movement sparked and how that event sparked a movement, and then we go to all the things that Oprah talks about here and interviews. So anyway, just really fun stuff. When I found out people could interview each other, we could set up a panel, I could ask them questions, all the things and all the creativity went in my mind that I could use in lesson plans and can, again, adapt it to any different lesson. Let me go and back to the PowerPoint and summarize a few things, because I think we are getting to, let's see, back to presentation mode. I want to make sure we're respectful of time. So that's role playing. Here are some things I took from the book of examples that you could use in interviews. You know, elementary role modeling. You could, you know, these are historical figures that you might want to interview. George Washington, Amelia Earhart, Abraham Lincoln. You know, you can interview fictional characters. Harry Potter, Willy Wonka. You could have fun with Peter Pan, Robin Hood, the Grinch. High school, moving up to Jane Eyre, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Virginia Woolf. You can go Alan Turing, John Nash, Ada Lovelace in technology and computers, all kinds of really cool things. I've done most of these in examples in different webinars. And then interviewing each other, pairs of people. In some cases, you can pick pairs that are just, you know, very similar or completely different. George Washington, Abraham Lincoln would be interesting. Rosa Parks, we did that, but with Martin Luther King. How about Amelia Earhart, a great explorer, with another great explorer, Neil Armstrong? Helen Keller and Thomas Edison. Be interesting to hear what they say. High school side. How about William Shakespeare and Lin-Manuel Miranda on how you use the creative spirit to create things? Really interesting. Diego Rivera and Pablo Picasso. So there's so many things that you can do. I'm going to skip some other things here that I was going to show, because I can show so much and get so excited about it, and kind of just go through a couple other things about ChatGPT and how to use it in the class. And then I want to show you one other thing about Midjourney, and then a couple things about ESGI here at the end. So I think I'm not going to spend a lot of time, because this could be a whole chapter in and of itself, but how do you get away with students not plagiarizing and using ChatGPT for homework, particularly if you're middle school or high school? I think we have to think differently. We have to assume that everyone has access to AI in the future that's going to get better and better and better. We cannot give them assignments that are perfect for copying on AI. It's not just their responsibility not to copy, it's our responsibility not to give them an assignment. Write a 3-paragraph essay on the important on George Washington's history. Well, in the old days, we just copied it out of an encyclopedia. Today, they're just going to copy it out of AI and change a few words. That was a bad assignment 30 years ago. It's still a bad assignment. What we want to do is think of instructional strategies that reverse the traditional teaching, ways that they learn the content outside of class and in the classroom is much more interactive in projects and discussions. This is called the flipped classroom. That started way before AI. I think people are going to start talking more and more about this. What you do is you assign the reading or the content for homework, where they have to read about Alexander Hamilton and know more about him. And then when we come to class, we do these kind of interactive assignments with Alexander Hamilton I just showed you, or we write an essay about him where you're actually in front of me writing with your own pen and your own paper, and you're doing that in class, where we used to do it the other way, which is I teach you about him in class and you go home and write the assignment. So I think it's really rethinking how we use this. The other, if you're a middle school or high school teacher, a suggestion is you assign them to use AI as part of the project. Hey, I want you to do a science experiment where you're talking about global warming, and I would like you to think about what some of the greatest risks are by asking ChatGPT a series of questions and analyze, and then the homework assignment they turn in is actually the questions and answers they had, the session they had with ChatGPT. Again, read To Kill a Mockingbird, go home tonight and debate the moral here and what the town was doing, who represented what, and you're going to be asking ChatGPT those questions, and it's going to give you the assignment to be the readout of how analytical your questions were and how you arrived at using ChatGPT to help you understand that. So a very different way of doing things. I'm not going to read any of these. This will be in if those who want to get the PowerPoint afterward, but these are great ways that you could use homework assignments with ChatGPT, where an elementary student, these are big words and you could put it in more simple words, but it could help them, create a playground. It could do time travel, where a student could ask it, hey, where, you say, where, I want to do time travel. It's going to answer, where do you want to go? Let's do this. And what do I need to bring? Why wouldn't I want to bring this? Could I bring that? Real interesting to see a young student investigate the role of bees. High school students debating what if scenarios with it, analyzing a poem deeper with ChatGPT collectively. So lots of good examples. Real quick, I'm going to just go through this really fast here. Another thing you've heard a lot about AI in images. There's programs, not ChatGPT, that's just words, but it is programs like Midjourney, DALL-E, Adobe, Stable Diffusion, where you could write a prompt and get some incredible pictures. And I'll just show you some of the examples I give. I said, let's appreciate artists. So I give it prompts for teaching. Show me what a classroom would look like by Rembrandt, by in the middle, by Michelangelo, by Van Gogh. And this is what it gives me, just incredible art. What would classrooms look like if interpreted by Frida, by Picasso, by DALL-E? Some just great graphics. What would it look like, classroom ideas? We could ask it, hey, we just sung the song in kindergarten, Old MacDonald. Give us a picture what you think Old MacDonald looks like. Okay, we just read a pirate book. Illustrate my pirate book. Students could ask it, we could do in a whole group instruction. What will learning in space look like? Let's illustrate that. Some pretty cool things here. Other classroom ideas, recreate our classroom as a Lego room. Really interesting, it can do that. Illustrate Socrates as a cartoon. These are just crazy prompts I was thinking of. Here's Homer Simpson. Draw me, I'm 5, my mom and my cat. Okay, student puts that in. This is what it drew, and it could be more specific if you had a specific kind of cat or thing. So good elementary examples here. Classroom ideas, again, going up a little bit. Illustrate an email well camouflaged. This is more high school or middle school. Interpret the tale of 2 cities. Picture a square in Mexico for a cultural event. And imagine a climate change, picture the Battle of Antietam. Interpret Dylan Thomas's poem, Do Not Go Gentle Into the Night. It even gives you photorealism. Give me a picture, a photorealistic picture of John Kennedy. These teachers on the bottom right are not teachers. They're just pictures made up on AI. They're not real people. So really cool things. Final couple words here. Riverside and ESGI are working to create a new AI module that we're hoping maybe to come out in early back to school. And what it would allow you to do is a beta is just to begin to play with AI and use it a little bit. And so you could pick your student or your classes. You would be able to pick the student, the topics. Maybe you're going to pick these 5 ELA tests, these 5 math tests. And from that, it's going to say, generate some resources. And it would give you some activities that reinforce these specific tests for this specific student based on how this specific student did. It would allow me to analyze test results. I would be able to get a single profile that says, hey, these are the 5 different tests, because we have parent letters that let you give a summary of right or wrong for the parents, but now you can have them for yourself and for parents. Give me your best analysis, AI, looking at all these tests my student took. What do you think? And then number 3, give me recommended teaching strategies for this particular kid. What's the best way for me to reach them? How can I do some one-on-one work with them, some reinforcement, okay? Give me a comprehensive report about the student completely in all these different areas, by test, by what they're doing well, what they're gonna have to work on. And then I could also have another choice here, recommend a parent support. All the things I could send a letter home to parent, hey, these are the strategies they're struggling with. Here's things that you can work on. So we're working on this right now as a beta to kind of be able to use your data with your students in a way that gives you some really helpful strategies to go forward. So with that, I'm going to skip to one quick plug. I have written a book. It should come out another month or so, and it goes deep into all this information, very practical. It's got hundreds and hundreds of prompts you can use. And so I think the future is really bright. We're not yet there with robots in the classroom, but sometimes, as I say in some of my presentations. I think that, there's a song in the 80s, "The future is so bright, I had to wear shades." And that's kind of how I see it. I think it's going to be so exciting as we get creative and do this in the future. So with that, I'm going to stop and turn it back to Rochelle.
Thank you so much, Jim. We learned so much today. This information is so awesome. ESGI is proud to sponsor these webinars every month. If you are a current ESGI teacher, we thank you and suggest that you check out all our new features, including the new teacher homepage and new teacher dashboard. If you've never tried ESGI, sign up for an ESGI free 60-day trial using promo code ESGIAI. Don't forget to check your email in the next week for your certificate of participation and a link to this broadcast. Please follow ESGI's YouTube channel to watch previous webinars. Thanks again, Jim, and thanks everyone for joining us. Have a good night.